The reason you feel overwhelmed isn't because you have too much to do. It's because you're trying to be 3 different types of workers at the same time, and your brain literally cannot handle the switching costs. Research shows that workplace interruptions can cost up to 40% of your productivity, and most people get interrupted every 3 minutes. I discovered this when I analyzed my most productive days versus my most chaotic ones, and what I found changed everything. There are exactly 3 types of workers, and once you identify which one you are right now, you can design your entire work approach around your cognitive strengths instead of fighting against them. But first, we need to understand what productivity actually means. The real definition of productivity in 2025. Most people think productivity means getting more things done faster. They measure success by how many emails they sent, how many meetings they attended, or how many tasks they checked off their list. This is completely wrong. Productivity is actually the amount of meaningful output you create divided by the focused input you put in. The math is simple, but most people get it backwards. In 2025, the average knowledge worker faces constant app switching throughout their day, and research shows this behavior can reduce productivity by 15 to 40%. Think about that impact for a second. Nearly half of your productive capacity gets lost just from jumping to different tools and tasks. Every single switch costs your brain energy and time to refocus. This creates what I call the productivity illusion, where you feel incredibly busy, but you accomplish nothing that actually matters. Here's what happens when you switch between apps constantly. Your brain has to load the context of what you were doing, remember where you left off, and then orient itself to the new task. This switching process creates a significant drain on your cognitive resources. So when you check Slack in the middle of writing a report, you're not just losing the 30 seconds it takes to read the message. You're losing the mental energy and focus it takes to get back into the flow of writing. Most people spend their entire day in this switching state. They open their laptop, check email, jump to a spreadsheet, get a notification from their project management tool, hop on a quick call, then try to remember what they were doing before the call started. They end the day exhausted because their brain has been working overtime just to keep up with the context switching, not to actually produce anything valuable. I used to be trapped in this exact cycle. 3 years ago, I was working 60-hour weeks and barely keeping my head above water. I had a massive to-do list that never seemed to get shorter. I was constantly putting out fires and responding to other people's urgent requests. At the end of each week, I felt like I had worked incredibly hard, but I couldn't point to anything significant I had actually accomplished. Then I discovered something that changed everything. I started tracking not just what I did each day, but what type of work I was doing and when I did it. What I found shocked me. My best work, the stuff that actually moved my business forward, happened during very specific time blocks when I wasn't switching between different types of activities. When I protected those time blocks and eliminated the switching, something incredible happened. I went from 60-hour weeks to 35-hour weeks, but my output tripled. I wasn't working harder, I was working in alignment with how my brain actually functions. The key was understanding that there are 3 distinct types of workers, and most people try to be all 3 at the same time. This is where most productivity advice fails. People give you time management tips or productivity hacks, but they don't help you understand what type of work you need to be doing and when you need to be doing it. They treat all work as the same when in reality, different types of work require completely different approaches. True productivity isn't about managing your time better. It's about understanding your work type and then engineering your entire day around maximizing that type of work. When you try to mix different work types together, you create switching costs that destroy your effectiveness. But when you batch similar work and eliminate the switching, productivity becomes almost effortless. The 3 worker types solve this switching cost problem completely. Each type has a natural rhythm and specific requirements for peak performance. When you identify your primary type and structure your day around it, you stop fighting against your brain and start working with it instead. Most people are actually a combination of these types, but they have one primary type that drives the majority of their value creation. The problem is they've never identified which type they are, so they bounce between all three throughout the day and wonder why they feel scattered and overwhelmed. Here's what makes this even more crucial in 2025. The modern workplace has created more opportunities for switching than ever before. We have more communication channels, more collaboration tools, and more ways for other people to interrupt our work. If you don't have a system for protecting your primary work type, you'll get pulled in every direction and accomplish nothing meaningful. The first type is called a maker. Makers create substantial work that requires long periods of uninterrupted focus. The second type is a manager. Managers coordinate and direct others through meetings, decisions, and communication. The third type is a hybrid who must excel at both creating and managing, but never at the same time. Each type requires a completely different approach to scheduling, environment design, and daily structure. A system that works perfectly for a manager will destroy a maker's productivity. A schedule that makes a maker incredibly effective will frustrate a manager and limit their impact. The biggest breakthrough comes when you stop trying to be good at all three types and instead become exceptional at your primary type. This isn't about limiting yourself, it's about maximizing your natural strengths and working in harmony with how your brain actually functions. Once you identify your type, everything else becomes systematic. You know exactly when to schedule different activities, how to structure your day for maximum output, and how to protect your most valuable working hours from interruptions and switching costs. I'm going to show you exactly how to identify which type you are, and then give you the specific calendar system that eliminates overwhelm for your type. This isn't theoretical productivity advice. This is a practical system that accounts for the reality of how work actually happens in 2025. The calendar system I'll share works because it's built around your natural working style instead of fighting against it. Most people try to force themselves into productivity systems that weren't designed for their work type, then blame themselves when the system doesn't work. When you align your schedule with your worker type, productivity stops being about willpower and discipline. It becomes automatic because you're finally working with your brain instead of against it. The switching costs disappear, the overwhelm fades, and you start producing the kind of work that actually moves your business forward. But before we get to the specific worker types and calendar systems, you need to understand exactly why your brain struggles so much when you try to operate as multiple worker types simultaneously. The neuroscience behind this will shock you. Why your brain can't handle being three workers at once. Your brain operates like a high-performance computer that can only run one complex program at a time, effectively. Most people try to operate as three completely different types of workers simultaneously throughout their day. They jump from creating content to managing their team to making strategic decisions, sometimes within the same hour. Your brain literally cannot handle this kind of cognitive switching, and the science proves it. When you switch between different types of work, your brain has to completely reorganize itself. The neural pathways you use for deep creative work are entirely different from the ones you use for making quick decisions or coordinating with other people. Each time you switch, your brain has to shut down one network and fire up another one. This process happens at a biological level, and it costs energy every single time. The University of California, Irvine found that employees are interrupted approximately every 3 minutes and 5 seconds, followed by an average of 23 minutes to regain focus. Think about what this means for your actual productivity. If you're getting interrupted every 3 minutes, but it takes 23 minutes to refocus, you're never actually focused. You spend your entire day in a state of partial attention, never reaching the mental state where real work gets done. Task switching reduces productivity by up to 40% and increases stress hormones by 50%. This isn't just about being less efficient. This is about your body physically responding to the constant switching as if it's under attack. Your cortisol levels spike every time you have to redirect your attention. By the end of the day, you feel like you've been running a marathon, even though you never left your desk. The reason this happens is something called attention residue. When you switch from one task to another, part of your attention stays stuck on the previous task. Your brain keeps background processing running on what you were doing before, which means you never give full attention to what you're doing now. It's like having multiple browser tabs open on a computer. Each tab consumes processing power even when you're not actively using it. Harvard Business Review found that employees spend almost 4 hours per week, or 9% of their work time, resetting their concentration back to their relevant tasks due to app switching. This is just from switching between software applications, not even switching between different types of work. When you add in the switching between creative work, management work, and strategic work, the productivity loss becomes massive. Here's an analogy that makes this clear. Imagine trying to be a surgeon and an air traffic controller in the same hour. As a surgeon, you need steady hands, intense focus, and the ability to make precise movements over long periods. As an air traffic controller, you need to process multiple streams of information quickly and make split-second decisions that affect many people. Each role requires a completely different mental state. The surgeon needs deep, sustained focus. The air traffic controller needs rapid decision-making ability. If you tried to switch between these two roles every few minutes, you would fail at both of them because you wouldn't have time to develop the mental state required for either one to work effectively. This is exactly what you're doing when you try to be a creator, a manager, and a strategist all in the same day without proper separation. You're asking your brain to constantly switch between fundamentally different operating modes. The result is that you never reach peak performance in any of them. This switching cost explains why you feel exhausted even when you haven't accomplished anything meaningful. Your brain has been working overtime just to manage the transitions between different types of work. The actual work you need to do never gets the full power of your focused attention because your mental resources are being consumed by the switching process itself. Most people blame themselves for this exhaustion. They think they lack discipline or willpower. They try productivity hacks and time management techniques, but nothing works because they're not addressing the root problem. The problem isn't that you're lazy or unfocused. The problem is that you're trying to use your brain in a way that goes against its fundamental design. Your brain evolved to focus on one type of challenge at a time. When our ancestors were tracking an animal for food, they didn't simultaneously try to build shelter and negotiate with other tribe members. They focused completely on the hunt until it was finished, then moved to the next type of activity. This deep focus allowed them to be successful at each individual task. Modern work has created an environment where we're expected to do the cognitive equivalent of hunting, building, and negotiating all at the same time. We switch between writing reports, answering emails, attending meetings, making decisions, and solving problems without any transition time between them. Our brains never get the chance to settle into the mental state required for any one type of work. The solution isn't to try harder or to find better productivity tricks. The solution is to understand that there are 3 distinct types of workers, and each type requires a completely different approach to structuring your day. When you try to be all 3 types simultaneously, you create massive switching costs that destroy your productivity. When you identify your primary type and structure your work around it, the switching costs disappear. The 3 worker types solve this problem by giving you a framework for organizing your work in a way that minimizes cognitive switching. Instead of bouncing between different types of activities throughout the day, you batch similar work together and create dedicated time blocks for each type of work you need to do. Your natural working style already tells you which type you are. You just need to recognize the patterns in when you do your best work, what types of activities energize you versus drain you, and how different kinds of interruptions affect your work performance. Most people have never paid attention to these patterns, so they don't realize they have a primary type. The first worker type creates substantial work that requires something most people never get in today's workplace. The maker. Why deep work is your superpower. Uninterrupted focus for extended periods. A maker is someone who creates substantial, complex work that requires sustained concentration for hours at a time. This is the person who builds courses, writes books, develops software, designs systems, produces content, or creates anything that demands deep mental effort. Makers work in 4 to 8 hour blocks because their most valuable output comes from extended periods of focused attention where they can reach what psychologists call flow state. The key thing to understand about makers is that even a 15-minute interruption can destroy an entire day's productivity. This isn't an exaggeration. When a maker gets interrupted, they don't just lose the time of the interruption itself. They lose the cognitive momentum they had built up, the mental models they were holding in their head, and the creative connections they were making. Getting back to that same level of focus can take anywhere from 30 minutes to several hours, depending on the complexity of what they were working on. Research shows that 1 hour of preparation can save 10 working hours over a week. This massive difference exists because complex creative work requires your brain to load enormous amounts of information into your working memory. When you're writing a book, for example, you need to keep track of characters, plot lines, themes, pacing, and dozens of other elements simultaneously. When you're developing software, you need to hold the entire system architecture in your head while you write individual pieces of code. This mental loading process takes time and energy. Think of it like a computer loading a massive program. You can't use the program effectively until it's fully loaded into memory. If you keep shutting down the program and restarting it, you waste enormous amounts of processing power just on the loading process. Makers face this same challenge every time they get interrupted and have to reload their mental context. Maker work includes activities like writing books, developing software applications, creating online courses, designing complex systems, producing video content, composing music, developing business strategies, creating artwork, building products, conducting research, or any work that requires sustained creative or analytical thinking. These activities share a common characteristic. They require you to build complex mental models and hold multiple variables in your working memory simultaneously. The hidden cost of meetings for makers is devastating. One 30-minute call can ruin 6 hours of potential flow state. Here's why this happens. Let's say you have a meeting scheduled at 2 p.m. Starting around noon, your brain begins anticipating the meeting. You start thinking about what you need to discuss, checking the time, and preparing mentally for the interaction. This anticipation prevents you from entering deep focus because part of your attention is reserved for the upcoming meeting. After the meeting ends, you need cognitive recovery time. The meeting has activated your social processing systems, filled your head with new information, and possibly created new tasks or decisions you need to make. Your brain needs time to process this information and transition back into the focused, creative state required for maker work. This transition can take 1 to 3 hours depending on the intensity of the meeting and the complexity of your creative work. Cognitive warm-up time is crucial for makers because they need extended periods to reach peak performance. When you sit down to do complex creative work, your brain doesn't immediately operate at full capacity. You need time to get into the mental state where you can do your best thinking. This warm-up period involves reviewing what you worked on previously, reloading the mental context, and gradually increasing your focus until you reach flow state. Most people underestimate how long cognitive warm-up takes. For simple tasks, you might need 15 to 30 minutes. For complex creative work, you often need 1 to 2 hours to reach peak performance. This means that if you only have 2 hours available for maker work, you might spend half that time just getting up to speed. You need blocks of 4 to 8 hours to make the warm-up time worthwhile and produce significant output. The Monday Hour 1 principle demonstrates the power of protecting maker time. When you dedicate 1 hour at the beginning of your week to planning and preparing your deep work sessions, you can save up to 10 hours of wasted time throughout that week. This preparation allows you to enter your maker blocks with clear objectives and the mental context already loaded, eliminating the warm-up time that normally consumes the first hour or two of creative work. This planning approach illustrates a critical point about makers. They often sabotage themselves by accepting too many meetings and interruptions. They think they're being helpful or collaborative by staying available throughout the day. In reality, they're destroying their ability to produce the deep work that creates the most value for their business or organization. Most makers unknowingly sabotage themselves by accepting meeting requests without considering the hidden costs. They see a 30-minute meeting and think it only costs 30 minutes of their day. They don't account for the anticipation time before the meeting, the recovery time after the meeting, and the lost opportunity to enter flow state during the hours surrounding the meeting. This self-sabotage happens because makers often feel guilty about needing long blocks of uninterrupted time. They worry that they're being antisocial or uncooperative. They think they should be more available and responsive to others. This guilt causes them to say yes to meetings and interruptions that destroy their productivity. They end up working longer hours to compensate for their reduced effectiveness during their peak creative hours. The solution requires understanding that protecting maker time isn't selfish, it's strategic. Organizations get the most value from makers when they allow them to work according to their natural rhythm. A maker who produces exceptional work during protected time blocks creates more value than a maker who's constantly available but never reaches flow state. Scheduling strategies for makers must account for these cognitive realities. You can't schedule maker work in small fragments throughout the day and expect good results. You need to create large blocks of protected time and defend them aggressively. This means saying no to meetings during your peak creative hours, batching communication activities into specific time periods, and educating others about your working style. The challenge is that most workplaces are designed around the needs of a completely different type of worker. While makers need isolation and extended focus, there's another worker type mastering the art of orchestration. On the exact opposite conditions. A manager is someone whose primary value comes from coordinating, deciding, and directing others. This is the person who leads teams, makes decisions, trains staff, reviews work, solves problems, and handles strategic planning. Managers create value through orchestration rather than creation. They multiply the effectiveness of other people instead of producing individual output through deep focus work. Managers thrive on 30 to 60-minute interaction blocks and actually gain energy from variety. While makers need hours of uninterrupted time to reach peak performance, managers operate most effectively when they can move between different types of interactions throughout the day. A manager might have a decision-making session, followed by a team meeting, then a training call, then a problem-solving discussion. This variety keeps them engaged and allows them to apply their skills across multiple areas simultaneously. The key difference is that managers process information through interaction. They think out loud, test ideas with other people, and make decisions based on input from multiple sources. Where a maker needs isolation to think clearly, a manager needs interaction to think effectively. Their brain works best when it's engaged with other people and processing multiple streams of information. Research shows that when managers set designated meeting hours, they protect maker productivity effectively throughout their organization. This finding reveals something crucial about the manager role. Managers are not productivity destroyers when they work according to their natural rhythm. They become productivity multipliers by creating structure that allows different worker types to operate at peak effectiveness. This coordination function is not a bug in the manager role, it's a feature. The manager's job is fundamentally about communication and coordination. They need to stay connected to what's happening across different areas of the organization. They need to be available to make decisions when bottlenecks occur. They need to provide guidance and support to team members who are stuck or uncertain about priorities. Many managers who try to do deep work often struggle and feel guilty about their natural communication-heavy style. They read productivity advice that emphasizes the importance of deep focus and long blocks of uninterrupted time. They try to implement maker strategies like blocking out hours for concentrated work. Then they feel frustrated when they can't maintain focus for extended periods or when they find themselves wanting to check messages and connect with their team. this guilt is completely misplaced. The manager role requires a different type of mental processing than the maker work. Managers are not failed makers who lack the discipline for deep work. They are people whose brains are optimized for rapid decision-making, social processing, and information synthesis. When they try to force themselves into maker work patterns, they're fighting against their natural strengths. Manager work includes activities like leading team meetings, making strategic decisions, training new employees, reviewing and approving work from others, solving operational problems, coordinating between departments, setting priorities, providing feedback and coaching, managing budgets and resources, handling client relationships, and developing business strategies. These activities require quick thinking, social skills, and the ability to process multiple perspectives simultaneously. The unifying characteristic of manager work is that it involves other people and requires rapid context switching. A manager might need to switch from a budget discussion to a personnel issue to a client problem within the same hour. This switching doesn't create the same cognitive costs for managers that it creates for makers, because manager work is inherently about synthesizing information from multiple sources and making decisions across different contexts. Decision fatigue becomes a critical issue for managers because they make dozens or hundreds of decisions every day. Unlike makers who might make a few important creative decisions during deep work sessions, managers face a constant stream of choices that require their attention. Should we approve this budget request? Which candidate should we hire? How should we handle this client complaint? What priority should we assign to this new project? Each decision consumes mental energy, and the quality of decisions typically decreases as the day progresses. This is why managers need structured systems to maintain quality choices throughout their workday. Without systems, they start making poor decisions in the afternoon simply because their decision-making capacity has been depleted by the constant stream of choices they've faced since morning. The best managers batch similar activities and create themed blocks for different types of management work. Instead of randomly mixing meetings, decisions, and strategic work throughout the day, they group similar activities together. They might have a morning block dedicated to decision-making, an afternoon block for team meetings, and specific times set aside for strategic planning or administrative work. This batching approach reduces the cognitive switching costs that occur when managers jump between fundamentally different types of management activities. Making hiring decisions requires a different mental framework than conducting team meetings or reviewing financial reports. When managers batch similar activities, they can maintain the appropriate mental context for longer periods and make better decisions within each category of work. Themed blocks also allow managers to prepare mentally for different types of work. If they know Tuesday mornings are for strategic planning, they can review relevant information beforehand and come into those sessions with the right mindset. If Thursday afternoons are for team development, they can prepare coaching materials and focus their attention on personnel issues. The scheduling framework that maximizes manager effectiveness looks completely different from the scheduling approach that works for makers. Managers need frequent interaction opportunities, but they also need structure to prevent their days from becoming completely reactive. They need availability for urgent decisions and problems, but they also need protected time for strategic thinking and planning. This creates a unique scheduling challenge. Managers can't block out entire days for single activities like makers can, but they also can't allow their schedules to become completely fragmented. They need a middle ground that provides structure while maintaining flexibility for the inevitable urgent issues that require immediate attention. The solution involves creating a framework with built-in buffers and flexible blocks that can accommodate both planned activities and unexpected priorities. This framework recognizes that manager work is inherently unpredictable, while still providing enough structure to ensure that important strategic work gets done alongside the daily operational demands. The most dangerous mistake happens when managers and makers try to work together without understanding each other's needs. A manager's quick question can destroy hours of a maker's productive flow state. A maker's need for uninterrupted time can frustrate a manager who needs rapid feedback and collaboration. Without systems that account for both working styles, teams experience constant friction and reduced overall productivity. This conflict becomes especially problematic in modern workplaces where many professionals can't choose to be purely a maker or purely a manager. They must excel at both creating substantial work and managing others effectively, which creates the most complex productivity challenge of all. The hybrid, switching between two worlds. This complexity defines the hybrid worker type. A hybrid is someone who must excel at both deep creation and active management. This person builds a business while leading a team, creates content while managing clients, develops products while directing operations. Hybrids cannot choose to be just a maker or just a manager, because their role requires both types of work to be successful. They need to produce substantial creative output, and they need to coordinate and direct other people effectively. Hybrids face the greatest productivity challenges and highest overwhelm rates of all three worker types. The reason is simple. They must switch between two completely different cognitive modes that require opposite mental states. Creating substantial work requires long periods of uninterrupted focus where you can enter flow state and maintain complex mental models. Managing people requires rapid decision-making, constant availability, and the ability to process multiple streams of information simultaneously. These two modes are fundamentally incompatible. You cannot be in deep creative flow while simultaneously being available to make quick decisions and respond to other people's needs. You cannot maintain the complex mental models required for substantial creation while your brain is processing the social and logistical information required for effective management. Attempting to do both at the same time creates massive cognitive switching costs that destroy your effectiveness in both areas. Research shows that hybrid work arrangements can increase productivity by up to 0.08 percentage points per 1 point increase in remote work flexibility. This finding makes sense when you consider that hybrids benefit enormously from the ability to structure their environment around their dual responsibilities. The flexibility to separate creation and management work becomes crucial for their success. The problem is that most hybrids have never been taught how to structure their work to accommodate both types effectively. They try to mix maker and manager work throughout the same day or even within the same time blocks. This is the critical mistake that destroys their productivity and creates the overwhelming feeling that they are constantly busy but never making meaningful progress. Here is what this mistake looks like in practice. A hybrid sits down to work on creating a new product or writing important content. They get focused and start making progress. Then they check their phone and see a message from a team member who needs a quick decision. They respond to the message, make the decision, and try to get back to their creative work. But now, their flow state is broken. Their brain has switched from creative mode to management mode, and they need time to reload the mental context for their creative work. Before they can fully refocus, another management issue comes up. Maybe a client has a question or there is a problem that needs immediate attention. They handle this issue and try again to get back to their creative work. But the switching costs are accumulating. Each transition between creation and management consumes mental energy and requires cognitive recovery time. By the end of the day, they have spent most of their mental energy on switching between modes rather than producing meaningful output in either area. Hybrid work includes activities like building a business while leading a team, creating content while managing clients, developing products while directing operations, writing books while running companies, producing courses while training staff, designing systems while coordinating implementation, or any combination of substantial creation work with active people management. The common thread is that both types of work are essential and cannot be eliminated or fully delegated. Context switching costs become especially devastating for hybrids because they face switching between the two most cognitively demanding types of work. Switching between different management tasks creates some cognitive costs, but switching between deep creation and active management creates massive costs. Your brain has to completely reorganize itself from the focused, creative, internally directed state required for maker work, to the interactive, decision-focused, externally directed state required for manager work. Rapid transitions between maker and manager modes drain energy because each mode requires different neural networks and different types of mental processing. When you are in maker mode, your brain is optimized for sustained attention, creative connections, and complex problem-solving. When you are in manager mode, your brain is optimized for rapid decision-making, social processing, and information synthesis. Moving between these states requires significant mental energy and recovery time. The solution that makes hybrid work sustainable involves theming entire days around one mode or the other. Case studies show that hybrids who designate specific days for pure creation work and other days for management work see dramatic improvements in both areas. On creation days, they turn off all notifications, do not check messages, and do not take any calls or meetings. They focus entirely on product development, content creation, and strategic planning. On management days, they are fully available for their team, handle all decisions and problems, conduct meetings, and take care of operational issues. This separation approach works because it eliminates the switching costs that destroy hybrid productivity. Instead of constantly transitioning between creation and management modes, hybrids can settle into each mode for extended periods and maximize their effectiveness in that mode. They still do both types of work, but they do them at different times with proper boundaries between them. The scheduling solution requires understanding that you cannot optimize for both modes simultaneously. You must choose specific times to be in maker mode and other specific times to be in manager mode. This does not mean you can never switch between modes, but it means you must be intentional about when and how you make these transitions. The key is creating clear boundaries between your creation time and your management time. During creation blocks, you must be completely unavailable for management decisions and interactions. During management blocks, you must be fully present for your team and operational needs. This boundary system prevents the constant switching that destroys effectiveness in both areas. Understanding your worker type is only the first step. The real productivity killer happens when different worker types try to work together without recognizing these fundamental differences in how their brains operate. The hidden productivity killer, when worker types collide. The most devastating productivity killer in modern workplaces happens when different worker types try to collaborate without understanding each other's fundamental needs. This creates a cascade of interruptions, miscommunications, and destroyed focus that can reduce an entire team's effectiveness by massive percentages. Most people have no idea this is happening because they assume everyone works the same way they do. Here's what reveals the scope of this problem. The majority of workplace interruptions come from well-meaning colleagues who don't understand working styles. These aren't malicious disruptions or people trying to waste time. These are teammates, managers, and collaborators who genuinely believe they're being helpful or efficient by reaching out when they need something. They have no awareness that their timing and approach can completely derail someone else's productivity. Think about what this means for your daily work experience. Most interruptions you face come from people who think they're doing the right thing. They see you at your desk and assume you're available. They send a quick message, thinking it will only take a minute. They schedule a brief meeting, assuming it's just a small break in your day. They have no understanding that their quick question might cost you hours of recovery time. Here's how this plays out in real workplace scenarios. A manager needs a quick decision about a client issue. They see their maker colleague working at their computer and walk over to ask a simple question. The question itself takes 2 minutes. The maker provides the answer, and the manager walks away feeling like they handled the issue efficiently. But the maker has just lost their entire flow state and will need 2 to 3 hours to regain their previous level of focus and productivity. This productivity recovery time is not an exaggeration. When a maker gets interrupted during deep work, their brain has to reload the complex mental context they were maintaining. If they were writing a detailed report, they need to remember where they were in their argument, what evidence they were planning to include next, and how the current section connects to the overall structure. If they were developing software, they need to reload the system architecture, remember the specific problem they were solving, and rebuild their understanding of how different pieces of code interact. The interruption doesn't just steal the 2 minutes of the actual question. It destroys the cognitive momentum that took hours to build. The maker now faces a choice between spending significant time rebuilding their focus or switching to simpler tasks that don't require deep concentration. Either choice reduces their overall productivity and creates frustration that builds over time. Mismatched scheduling creates even more systematic destruction of team productivity. Many organizations schedule meetings based on when it's convenient for managers without considering the impact on makers. A 1-hour team meeting scheduled at 2 p.m. might seem reasonable to a manager who thrives on interaction and variety. But for a maker, that meeting destroys the entire afternoon because they can't enter deep focus knowing they'll be interrupted in a few hours. This scheduling mismatch creates workplace friction that most teams never address directly. Makers start to resent meetings and feel like their colleagues don't respect their work. Managers become frustrated when makers seem unavailable or antisocial. Hybrids feel torn between accommodating both types of needs and end up satisfying neither effectively. The team develops an undercurrent of tension that reduces collaboration and creates defensive behavior patterns. Research shows that teams with defined worker type awareness are 45% more productive, demonstrating the massive opportunity cost of ignoring these differences. This productivity increase comes from simple changes in how teams coordinate their work. When everyone understands that makers need protected time blocks, managers need interaction opportunities, and hybrids need clear separation between their different work modes, the team can design systems that support everyone's peak performance. Traditional meeting culture is designed for managers and accidentally sabotages makers. Most organizations default to meeting-heavy cultures because managers typically hold leadership positions, and they design systems based on their own working preferences. Meetings are where managers do their most important work. They coordinate resources, make decisions, align team members, and solve problems through group discussion. For managers, more meetings often mean more productivity and better outcomes. But this same meeting culture destroys maker productivity. Every meeting fragments their day and prevents them from entering the extended focus states where they produce their most valuable work. A maker who has 3 meetings scattered throughout their day will struggle to accomplish any substantial creative work between those meetings. They end up spending their time on administrative left tasks and busy work instead of the deep work that creates the most value for the organization. The solution requires recognizing that different worker types need different communication and collaboration approaches. Makers need asynchronous communication, batched meetings, and protected time blocks. Managers need regular interaction opportunities, quick decision-making sessions, and frequent check-ins. Hybrids need clear separation between their creation time and their management time, with appropriate communication protocols for each mode. One company discovered the power of implementing worker-type respect protocols and increased their output by 60% as a result. They started by having every team member identify their primary worker type and communicate their optimal working patterns to their colleagues. Makers shared their deep work hours and preferred communication methods. Managers shared their availability for quick decisions and their meeting preferences. Hybrids explained their different modes and how to interact with them appropriately in each mode. The company then redesigned their communication and meeting systems around these different needs. They created specific hours when makers were available for questions and meetings, with the understanding that they were completely unavailable during their deep work blocks. They established communication protocols that allowed managers to get quick answers without disrupting maker focus. They designed meeting schedules that accommodated everyone's peak performance times. The 60% output increase came from eliminating the hidden productivity costs that had been destroying their team effectiveness. Makers could finally maintain focus for extended periods and produce high-quality work consistently. managers could get the interaction and decision-making opportunities they needed without accidentally sabotaging their teammates. Hybrids could excel in both creation and management by having clear systems that supported both types of work. This success story reveals how much productivity most teams lose to worker-type conflicts without realizing it. The costs are hidden because they show up as general inefficiency, workplace stress, and mediocre output rather than obvious problems that can be easily identified and fixed. Teams assume that constant interruptions, scattered focus, and workplace friction are normal parts of collaborative work. Communication rules that solve these conflicts require understanding each worker type's needs and designing interaction patterns that support everyone's peak performance. These rules create structure around when and how different types of workers collaborate, while protecting each person's most productive working hours. However, communication protocols alone aren't enough to solve the deeper productivity challenges that each worker type faces. The physical and digital spaces where you work have an even more powerful impact on your ability to maintain automatic productivity throughout the day. Changing your environment is 10 times more effective than relying on willpower or motivation to increase your productivity. Most people think productivity is about having more discipline or finding the right motivational strategies. They try to force themselves to work harder through sheer mental effort. This approach fails because it fights against how your brain actually works. Your brain is designed to take the path of least resistance. When you engineer your environment correctly, productive work becomes the easiest option available. Behavioral science research shows that environmental design accounts for 80% of productivity success. This means that how you structure your physical and digital spaces has 4 times more impact on your results than your personal motivation or discipline. The most successful people understand this principle and spend their time optimizing their environment instead of trying to develop superhuman willpower. They make productive choices automatic by removing obstacles and distractions from their workspace. There are 3 key environmental guidelines that either support or sabotage your worker type. The first guideline is removing visual and digital clutter from your workspace. Research shows that task switching can reduce productivity by 15 to 40%, and visual clutter creates constant micro-interruptions that force your brain to process irrelevant information. Every item on your desk, every icon on your computer desktop, and every open browser tab competes for your attention and reduces your ability to focus on important work. For your physical environment, this means having a dedicated workspace that's clear, except for the materials you need for your current project. Your desk should contain only what's necessary for your immediate work. Reference materials should be organized and stored out of sight when not in use. Visual distractions like personal photos, decorative items, or unrelated documents should be removed from your direct line of sight during work sessions. For your digital environment, this means organizing your computer to support focused work. Close applications you don't need for your current task. Turn off notifications from social media, news sites, and non-essential communication tools. Use website blockers to prevent access to distracting sites during work hours. Organize your files so you can find what you need quickly without searching through cluttered folders. Keep your desktop clean with only essential shortcuts visible. The second guideline is optimizing natural light in your workspace. Poor lighting creates eye strain and mental fatigue that destroys your ability to maintain focus. Natural light improves cognitive performance and reduces the mental effort required to concentrate. If natural light isn't available, full-spectrum LED lights that mimic daylight can provide similar benefits. The key is having consistent, bright lighting that doesn't create glare on your screens or work materials. Position your workspace to take advantage of natural light without creating screen glare. If you're working on a computer, the light source should come from the side rather than directly behind or in front of your monitor. This reduces eye strain and helps maintain alertness throughout long work sessions. Avoid working in dim lighting or under harsh fluorescent lights that can cause headaches and reduce your ability to concentrate. The third guideline is establishing meeting-free focus blocks that protect your peak performance hours. Different worker types need different approaches to protecting their most productive time. Makers need large blocks of uninterrupted time for deep work. Managers need structured interaction opportunities that don't fragment their decision-making capacity. Hybrids need clear separation between their creation time and their management time. This protection requires setting specific hours when you're completely unavailable for meetings, calls, or non-urgent communication. During these focus blocks, you turn off all notifications and communicate to others that you cannot be interrupted except for genuine emergencies. The key is consistency. Your focus blocks should happen at the same time each day or week so that others can plan around them and you can develop the habit of entering deep work during these protected hours. Creating physical and digital environments that make productive work the path of least resistance requires systematic removal of obstacles. Start by identifying every step required to begin your most important work. If you need to clear clutter from your desk, find documents on your computer, or wait for applications to load, these steps create friction that makes it harder to start working. Each point of friction gives your brain an opportunity to choose an easier activity instead. The concept of friction removal explains how small obstacles create major productivity blocks. Every time you encounter friction, your brain has to make a decision about whether to continue with the current task or switch to something easier. These micro-decisions consume mental energy and create opportunities for procrastination. When you remove friction, you eliminate these decision points and make productive work the automatic choice. Friction can be physical, digital, or social. Physical friction includes things like uncomfortable seating, poor lighting, or having to search for materials. Digital friction includes slow loading times, disorganized files, or complicated software interfaces. Social friction includes interruptions from other people, unclear communication about your availability, or pressure to respond immediately to non-urgent requests. The Monday Hour 1 principle demonstrates how environmental preparation creates massive productivity gains. When you spend 1 hour at the beginning of your week preparing your environment and planning your deep work sessions, you can save up to 10 hours of wasted time throughout that week. This preparation includes organizing your workspace, setting up the digital tools you'll need, and creating clear boundaries around your focus time. This preparation approach works because it eliminates the daily decisions about where to work, what tools to use, and how to structure your time. Instead of starting each work session by figuring out what you need and where to find it, you can immediately begin productive work, because everything is already organized and accessible. Case studies of remote workers show how environment optimization can dramatically increase output when aligned with worker type needs. Makers who optimize their environment for extended focus sessions see the greatest improvements in creative output. Managers who organize their digital tools for rapid decision-making and communication become more effective at coordinating their teams. Hybrids who create flexible environments that support both deep work and collaborative activities can excel in both areas without constant switching costs. Understanding your worker type determines which environmental optimizations will have the greatest impact on your productivity. The same environmental change that helps a maker might hurt a manager's effectiveness. This is why generic productivity advice often fails. It doesn't account for the different environmental needs of different work types. Environmental optimization works together with systematic scheduling to create automatic productivity. When your environment supports your natural working style, you need a calendar system that protects your peak performance hours and eliminates the constant decisions about what to work on next. The 2025 calendar system that eliminates overwhelm. The calendar blocking system that eliminates overwhelm works because it accommodates all three worker types within the same framework, while protecting each type's peak performance requirements. This system recognizes that modern work environments require collaboration between different worker types, but it structures that collaboration in ways that minimize cognitive switching costs and maximize individual effectiveness. The foundation of this system is bottom-up scheduling. which means you protect your most important work first, then add meetings and collaborative activities around those protected blocks. Most people schedule top-down by accepting meeting invitations as they come in, then trying to fit their important work into whatever time remains. This approach guarantees that your most valuable work gets fragmented and interrupted by less important activities. Bottom-up scheduling starts with blocking out time for your primary worker-type activities before you add anything else to your calendar. Makers block out 4 to 8 hour periods for deep work before they accept any meetings. Managers block out their peak decision-making and interaction hours before they schedule administrative work. Hybrids block out separate time periods for creation work and management work before they add any mixed activities. The meeting protocol that works for hybrid work environments establishes designated meeting windows that respect each worker type's needs. Rather than allowing meetings to scatter randomly throughout the week, teams create specific time blocks when collaborative work happens. This approach follows the principle that when managers set designated meeting hours, they protect maker productivity effectively throughout their organization. The key is creating predictable windows for interaction while maintaining large blocks of protected time for focused work. Makers benefit from having all meetings clustered into specific days or time periods, leaving entire days free for uninterrupted creation work. Managers need regular interaction opportunities but can batch similar types of meetings together to reduce switching between different management activities. Hybrids require clear separation between their collaborative time and their creation time, with meetings scheduled only during their designated management blocks. Cross-time zone collaboration without destroying productivity requires establishing clear protocols about when different types of communication can happen. Synchronous communication, like meetings and calls, happens during designated collaboration windows. Asynchronous communication, like email and project updates, can happen anytime, but responses are expected within 24 hours rather than immediately. Urgent issues that cannot wait follow escalation procedures that don't depend on any single person being instantly available. Themed days reduce cognitive switching costs by batching similar work types together. Instead of mixing different kinds of activities throughout each day, you dedicate entire days to specific types of work. Makers might have creation days when they focus entirely on producing substantial work, and communication days when they handle meetings and administrative tasks. Managers might have decision days focused on strategic choices and problem solving, and operational days focused on team coordination and routine management tasks. For hybrids, themed days become essential because they prevent the constant switching between creation and management modes that destroys effectiveness in both areas. A hybrid might designate Mondays and Wednesdays as creation days when they work like a maker, and Tuesdays and Thursdays as management days when they work like a manager. This separation allows them to excel in both areas without paying the switching costs that come from mixing both types of work. The Monday Hour 1 principle demonstrates how systematic planning creates massive productivity gains. When you spend 1 hour at the beginning of your week preparing your schedule and protecting your most important work, you can save up to 10 hours of wasted time throughout that week. This preparation eliminates the daily decisions about what to work on and when to work on it, making productive choices automatic rather than requiring constant willpower. Real calendar examples show how each worker type structures their ideal week differently. A maker's calendar shows large blocks of uninterrupted time with minimal meetings clustered into specific days or time periods. Their calendar might show Tuesday through Thursday blocked for deep work from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., with all meetings and communication batched into Monday morning and Friday afternoon. A manager's calendar shows more variety and interaction throughout the week, but with themed blocks for different types of management work. They might have mornings dedicated to decision-making and strategic work, afternoons focused on team meetings and coordination, and specific time blocks set aside for administrative tasks and planning. A hybrid's calendar shows clear separation between creation blocks and management blocks, with minimal mixing between the two types of work. Their creation days look like a maker's schedule with long periods of protected focus time. Their management days look like a manager's schedule with meetings, decisions, and team coordination activities. The color coding method provides instant visual feedback on productivity patterns and helps you identify when your schedule aligns with or conflicts with your worker type needs. Each type of activity gets assigned a specific color. Deep work might be blue, meetings might be green, administrative tasks might be yellow, and buffer time might be gray. When you look at your calendar, you can immediately see whether your week supports your primary worker type or fights against it. A maker's calendar should show mostly blue blocks with small amounts of other colors clustered together. A manager's calendar should show a mix of colors throughout the week, but with similar colors grouped together rather than scattered randomly. A hybrid's calendar should show clear separation between creation colors and management colors, with each type of work getting dedicated time periods. The color coding also reveals productivity patterns over time. If you consistently feel overwhelmed or unproductive, you can look at your calendar colors to identify the problem. Too much color mixing usually indicates excessive switching costs. Too little of your primary color indicates that you're not protecting enough time for your most important work type. This calendar system eliminates overwhelm because it provides structure that supports your natural working style while maintaining the flexibility required for collaborative work and unexpected priorities. However, the system only works when you implement it systematically, rather than trying to remember all these principles each time you schedule your week. The Monday Power Hour that saves 10 hours per week. The weekly planning ritual that eliminates daily decision fatigue and reactive scheduling happens every Monday morning for exactly 1 hour. This is not optional time that you squeeze in when you feel like planning. This is protected time that you defend as aggressively as your most important meetings, because this 1 hour determines the effectiveness of your entire week. Most people start each day deciding what to work on, which consumes mental energy and creates opportunities for procrastination. When you plan your entire week in advance, you eliminate hundreds of micro decisions that drain your focus throughout the week. The look forward, look back method captures all commitments and prevents things from falling through cracks. The look back portion involves reviewing your previous week to identify incomplete tasks, missed deadlines, and follow-ups that need attention. You examine what you planned versus what actually happened, noting any patterns that created problems or unexpected delays. This review process ensures that nothing gets forgotten just because it didn't happen when you originally scheduled it. The look forward portion involves scanning the next 2 to 4 weeks to identify upcoming deadlines, commitments, and priorities that need preparation time. You look for project milestones that require advance work, meetings that need preparation, and deadlines that could create bottlenecks if you don't start early enough. This forward scanning prevents the common problem of urgent deadlines suddenly appearing because you forgot about commitments you made weeks or months earlier. Research shows that 60 minutes of weekly planning saves an average of 10 hours of execution time throughout the week. This massive time savings comes from reduced decision fatigue and proactive task management that eliminates reactive scheduling. When you know exactly what you need to work on each day, you spend zero time deciding what to do next. When you identify potential problems in advance, you can solve them before they become urgent crises that consume entire days. The force ranking system ensures that the most important work gets protected time, regardless of interruptions. Force ranking means you identify the 3 most critical outcomes you need to achieve during the week, then assign each outcome a specific priority level. Priority 1 work gets scheduled first and receives the best time slots when your energy and focus are highest. Priority 2 work gets scheduled around Priority 1 work. Priority 3 work only gets scheduled if you have time remaining after protecting your top 2 priorities. This ranking system prevents the common problem of spending your best hours on urgent but unimportant tasks while pushing your most valuable work into whatever time remains. Most people fill their calendars with meetings and administrative tasks, then try to squeeze their important creative or strategic work into small gaps between other commitments. Force ranking flips this approach by protecting your most important work first, then fitting everything else around those protected blocks. Accurately estimating task duration requires accounting for modern work complexity that most people ignore. A task that takes 2 hours of focused work time actually requires more calendar time because of setup, cleanup, and transition activities. You need time to gather materials, load mental context, reach peak focus, complete the work, document your progress, and transition to your next activity. Most people estimate based only on the core work time and consistently underestimate how much calendar time they actually need. The complexity of modern work has increased significantly compared to traditional office environments. Remote work requires additional time for video call setup and technical troubleshooting. Collaborative projects require more coordination overhead. Digital tools create additional friction through loading times, software updates, and technical issues. Your time estimates must account for these realities rather than assuming perfect conditions that rarely exist. Buffer time calculation accommodates the increased rate of urgent requests and unexpected priorities. The baseline buffer is 25% of your estimated task time, but this percentage increases based on your role and work environment. Managers need higher buffer percentages because they face more interruptions and urgent decisions. Makers can use lower percentages during protected deep work blocks, but need higher percentages during collaborative periods. The buffer calculation also accounts for your personal patterns of interruption and distraction. If you consistently get pulled into urgent meetings, your buffer needs to be higher. If you work in an environment with frequent technical issues, you need buffer time for troubleshooting. If you tend to underestimate how long tasks take, you need buffer time to account for your optimistic planning tendencies. Color coding provides instant visual feedback on productivity patterns by assigning specific colors to different types of activities. Deep work gets one color, meetings get another color, administrative tasks get a third color, and buffer time gets its own color. When you look at your completed week, the color distribution shows you immediately whether your time aligned with your priorities or got consumed by less important activities. The visual feedback helps you identify productive patterns and problematic patterns without analyzing detailed time logs. A week dominated by meeting colors indicates that you may have sacrificed important individual work for collaborative activities. A week with scattered colors indicates excessive task switching that created cognitive costs. A week with large blocks of consistent colors indicates better focus and potentially higher productivity. Reviewing and optimizing your system based on what actually happened versus what you planned creates continuous improvement in your scheduling accuracy and effectiveness. This review process examines 3 key areas. First, you identify tasks that took significantly longer than estimated and analyze why your estimates were inaccurate. Second, you identify interruptions and urgent requests that disrupted your planned work and consider how to prevent or accommodate similar disruptions in the future. Third, you identify time blocks where you were particularly productive or unproductive and analyze what environmental or scheduling factors contributed to these outcomes. The optimization process involves adjusting your future planning based on these insights. If certain types of tasks consistently take longer than estimated, you adjust your time estimates upward. If specific times of day consistently produce better results, you protect those times for your most important work. If certain combinations of activities create switching costs that reduce your effectiveness, you redesign your schedule to minimize these problematic transitions. This planning ritual creates urgency around implementing systematic changes because every week you delay represents another week of lost productivity and increased overwhelm. The difference between planned weeks and unplanned weeks becomes obvious once you experience both approaches. Planned weeks feel controlled, productive, and satisfying. Unplanned weeks feel chaotic, reactive, and exhausting. The transformation from overwhelm to systematic productivity requires more than understanding these concepts. It requires a structured approach to implementation, that accounts for the challenges of changing established work patterns. Your 30-day productivity transformation plan. Your current responsibilities. The implementation process requires 3 focused steps that build systematically over 30 days. This is not a gradual improvement approach where you make small adjustments over time. This is a complete transformation of how you approach work that produces measurable results within 1 month. Step 1 involves identifying your primary worker type through systematic observation. You cannot optimize your productivity until you understand whether you are primarily a maker, manager, or hybrid. Most people think they know their work type, but they have never actually tracked their patterns objectively. This step requires becoming a scientist, studying your own productivity patterns. Track your work activities for 1 full week, paying attention to when you felt most energized, when you felt drained, and when you produced your highest quality work. Notice which types of activities require your full attention and which ones you can do while multitasking. Rate each work session on energy and output quality to reveal your natural productivity patterns and peak performance hours. The key indicators will become obvious quickly. Makers will see their highest quality work happening during long, uninterrupted blocks. Managers will see their best results during interactive periods with variety and decision-making. Hybrids will notice they excel at different types of work, but struggle when they mix creation and management activities. Step 2 implements calendar blocking that protects your optimal work hours. This is where most people face the greatest resistance, because changing your schedule affects other people's expectations and habits. The key is communicating your changes as improvements to your effectiveness, rather than restrictions on your availability. Begin by blocking out your optimal work hours for your primary worker type before you schedule anything else. Makers block 4 to 8 hour periods for deep work. Managers block themed time periods for different types of management activities. Hybrids block separate days or half days for creation work versus management work. These blocks are non-negotiable because they protect the work that creates the most value. Next, batch your collaborative activities into specific time periods that do not conflict with your primary work blocks. Move existing meetings that interrupt your peak performance hours. Propose alternative times that work better for your productivity while still meeting other people's needs. Most colleagues will accommodate reasonable scheduling requests when you explain the productivity benefits. The communication approach depends on your relationship with each person. For team members, explain that you are optimizing your schedule to produce higher quality work and be more responsive during your available hours. For managers, emphasize that the changes will improve your output and contribution to team goals. For clients, focus on how the changes will result in better service and faster turnaround times. A sample script for colleagues might sound like this. I am restructuring my schedule to improve my focus and output quality. I will have dedicated focus time from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. when I will not be available for meetings or calls. However, I will be fully available and responsive from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. for collaboration and quick decisions. This change will allow me to produce higher quality work and be more helpful during our collaborative time. This approach positions the change as a benefit rather than a limitation. Step 3 establishes the weekly 1-hour planning ritual that eliminates daily decision fatigue. Research shows that 60 minutes of weekly planning saves an average of 10 hours of execution time throughout the week. This massive time savings comes from reduced decision fatigue and proactive task management that eliminates reactive scheduling. The Monday Hour 1 approach involves dedicating 1 hour every Monday morning to plan your entire week. This is not optional time that you squeeze in when you feel like planning. This is protected time that you defend as aggressively as your most important meetings, because this 1 hour determines the effectiveness of your entire week. During this planning session, you review your previous week to identify incomplete tasks and follow-ups that need attention. You scan the next 2 to 4 weeks to identify upcoming deadlines and commitments that need preparation time. You force rank your 3 most critical outcomes for the week and assign each outcome a specific priority level. Priority 1 work gets scheduled first, and receives the best time slots when your energy and focus are highest. Priority 2 work gets scheduled around Priority 1 work. Priority 3 work only gets scheduled if you have time remaining after protecting your top 2 priorities. This ranking system prevents spending your best hours on urgent but unimportant tasks while pushing your most valuable work into whatever time remains. The planning session also involves batching similar work together to minimize cognitive switching costs. Instead of mixing different kinds of activities throughout each day, you dedicate specific time blocks to specific types of work. This batching approach reduces the mental energy required to transition between different types of activities and allows you to maintain focus for longer periods. Environment optimization happens naturally as you implement these 3 steps. Your physical and digital environments must support your worker type and eliminate friction that creates opportunities for distraction. Remove visual distractions, turn off notifications during focus hours, and organize your workspace so productive work becomes the path of least resistance. Common implementation challenges include resistance from colleagues who want access to your time, guilt about not being immediately available to others, and the temptation to abandon the system when urgent requests arise. Overcome resistance by demonstrating improved results and maintaining your availability during designated collaboration hours. Address guilt by remembering that your increased effectiveness benefits everyone who depends on your work. Success metrics from others who implemented this system in 2024 and 2025 show average productivity increases of 40 to 60% within the first month. More importantly, people report feeling more in control of their time, less overwhelmed by their workload, and more satisfied with the quality of work they produce. The transformation happens when you stop fighting your natural working style and start optimizing for it instead. The 3-step approach works because it addresses the root causes of overwhelm rather than just the symptoms. Most productivity advice focuses on time management techniques or motivation strategies. This system focuses on aligning your work approach with how your brain actually functions, which makes productive choices automatic rather than requiring constant willpower. The system works because it eliminates the root cause of workplace chaos. Productivity isn't about doing more things. It's about doing the right things in the right way for your brain. When you try to be 3 different workers at once, you create switching costs that destroy your effectiveness. When you identify your primary worker type and structure your day around it, productivity becomes automatic. Your challenge this week is simple. Track your work patterns for 3 days to identify whether you're a maker, manager, or hybrid. Then implement 1 protected planning hour using the Monday Hour 1 approach that research shows saves 10 hours weekly. Start with Monday Hour 1 planning and protected focus blocks tailored to your worker type.